Hello and welcome to the Car Care channel. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at the Lexus UX, a new model that launched in 2019, the smallest Lexus and the most economical Lexus, if you want to call it that. This is a replacement for the Lexus CT, which was a successful model that Lexus decided to send away, and now it is replaced by the Lexus UX. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the Lexus UX. We're going to talk about some of the technical specifications. We're going to take a little bit of an in-depth tour on the technical side of things. Then we're going to talk about the outside, the inside, some things we don't like about it, and the overall thoughts of this car. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. If you are a returning subscriber, well, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's talk about the exterior of the Lexus UX. At a first glance, this is a nice looking SUV. I really like how it looks. It's not all over the place. It's not really that much in your face. It does have a sophisticated and reserved look, which I appreciate because this is a model I truly like. The front does have the spindle grille. Some people will dislike that, but in my opinion, this one is not all over the place. Because this is a smaller SUV, it's not really humongous and goes the length of the Eiffel Tower. However, it is still a spindle grille nonetheless. The front, sharp looking headlights. I really like the overall look of this car. It doesn't have a bad angle. Whichever angle you look at it, it looks nice, looks sophisticated, is not showy. One thing about this car, which let's start off the review with. This car shares its DNA with two models. One of them is a Corolla Cross, which is a new model from Toyota, very reserved, kind of have similar design elements to this one that is conservative, reserved, and very function focused. But the other cousin to this car is a Toyota CHR, and conventional is nothing even close to the Toyota CHR. Toyota CHR is a very striking design. I describe it as strange in a good way. This does have some of that DNA that shows up, but you really need to look close. Let me show you a few examples. If you really focus close on the side design of the Lexus UX, you're going to notice two things. The first one is this car has fender flares, but the way the front fender is designed, you have the fender flare here, then there's a dip in the body and then a rise. So it kind of creates a channel, and it almost looks like the fender top is more popped out than the fender flare. It's actually at the same level, which creates this channel that comes in and starts disappearing right underneath the mirror. And it starts disappearing because of the second design feature. This is super cool in my opinion. Let's talk about it. So if you look at the profile of the front door here, the front of the door is pushed in and then it bubbles out and then it starts going back in right around the middle of the back door. And it's really hard to show it on camera. I'm trying my best here, but if you ever see one of these cars, notice the bubble shape of the door. It's like bowed out in the middle. And the reason for that is when you sit in the driver's seat, you're gonna feel the front of the door almost coming in, but where you sit, where your body is, it's more spacious. You have more room because the door is pushed out halfway toward the back of the door. It's pushed out, gives you more space. This is really cool, and it makes the side profile of this car very, very interesting. And it's not just a crazy design element. It's actually a very functional one, and you really notice it. This is a very small, compact crossover. And the driver's seat is very roomy and comfortable. And as you make your way to the back, as this bubble in the middle disappears, you almost have a reminiscence of that CHR extremely strange channel that runs across the taillight, but it's much more subtle. It's not much in your face, but there is something in the back that is still strange. Let's go look at that. Then we go into the back, and there is a lot going on in the back. Because I feel like there's too much design going on. There's two lines here, there's a line here, two lines coming back, and this line kind of, it's just too much going on. When you look close, too much, how should I call it, CHRness going on. But it doesn't make the back look bad. I really like the bar tail light. This is something Lexus has been doing toward the end, and many other manufacturers, this is becoming the fashion. They look really nice. The back looks preserved, even with all this too many body lines going on, it's still good. But there's one thing that is, the first time I saw it, it reminded me of something of the olden days. This taillight, it almost looks like a fin, in which I remember an era when cars had fins. They were a lot bigger than this, and they were made out of metal. But Lexus UX does have a fin. Two of them, actually, if you count. But then we look at the back door, which is, of course, power operated. There are a few things here. First one is the license plate stays down because the door itself, the back door, is small. Now, some people will say this has a very high loading floor where you gotta really lift, but if you compare it to the SUVs, it is actually not that high. Space here is not huge because you have that curve, a little bit similar to the CHR. You have that curved back, it's not like straight back, so you do sacrifice some of the space. But underneath the covers here, you do have a double-tiered storage area, which is nice. That is kind of reminds me of a Prius. Prius also have storage underneath the storage area, which is nice. You can hide stuff there. Again, this is a compact crossover. You're not going to expect to transport a couch here, but it is decent space for the decent size. You have 4 adults in their luggage. This might not be the car for you, but space here is okay. A little compromised by the shape of the back door, but that's how the compact crossover segment is, I suppose. Let's talk about the interior of the Lexus UX, which in my opinion, it is so nice to be able to sit in a small, compact crossover that has this nice of an interior. Folks, potentially, this is one of the biggest highlights of the Lexus UX. In my opinion, the outside look, it is reserved and everything. It is not a car that is designed to excite your emotions and everything, but this is a really nice interior. First, the materials. I mean, when Lexus makes their entry-level model, if we go back and look at the CT was nice, but this is really, really nice. All the leather is soft touch, at least in this model, which is a luxury model. The leather is super soft touch. All the materials that he touch, everything feels very high quality and very much Lexus. This is a problem with other manufacturers. When they make their entry-level model, that you really notice it. There is less materials that are nice, there are compromises, and you easily see them. But here, I feel like the materials, and I say this, the materials in the entry-level Lexus model is almost the same as those of the LS, the highest trim model that we reviewed a few months ago. It is a really nice place to be. Some of the highlights here, and actually goes back kind of a throw to the CHR. If you look at the overall design of the dash, this has that same bulge in the middle of the dash, or almost to point everything toward the driver a little bit. It has like that bulge in the middle of the dash, very similar to that of the CHR. Just kind of a hint behind the scenes that my cousin is strange and his name is CHR. But other than that, the leather is very nice here. It is super soft touch, and this is a really nice leather that Lexus uses lately. The top material on the dash, I'm trying my best to describe it here. It's very nice. It is not exactly soft, but it's this material that has a texture to it, even has a different look to it. Very nice stitching. Really like this material. And the gauge area reminds me of many models with the side controls. Remind me of many models, ES, LS. It is a nice design. It's not full screen. You still have some mechanical gauges, but it is nice and functional. I really like it. It's very high quality. As we move over to the center stack, things that you will use daily, they're all outside. I really like the toggles of the HVAC controls. They feel very high quality and very easy to operate and understand. The seat cooling and heating and the steering wheel Heating is all laid out very nicely here. You don't need to go through a screen, which the screen is a problem. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But you still have the auto heat and cooled seats and the auto steering wheel heater. That is really nice. I mean, this is an entry-level model to a luxury. Yes, it's a luxury model, but it's nice that you're not missing out on many features here. And another thing that sits proudly in the center console is a proper cable-operated shifter. Folks, some things need to stay simple, and this is an example of them. Nobody really had a problem with operating the shifter. It's all gimmicks to go to the electronic shifter. You got the knob and the buttons. It's all gimmick. Yes, it does free up a little bit of space, but it seems counterproductive when the manufacturers put a giant knob here which takes exactly the same space. At least that's just my opinion. And there are some UX exclusive touches that I really like here. For example, the knobs on the HVAC vents. At night, they light up. A very subtle light to show you exactly where the knob is to close and move the vent. That is really cool looking, and it just blends in. It's very soft, but it's really cool and actually functional in a way. And another thing that is very Lexus-like, just in case you forget after all the soft touch material, all this nice stuff, in case you forget you're in a luxury car, in the center console toward the front, next to the wireless charger, there is a little hidden power outlet. But when you press the power outlet and open it, the door doesn't just flap open and make a strange noise. No, it's ever so softly open to reveal the power outlet that nobody's going to use because everybody's using USB these days. But it is there, and it's very soft opening. Another thing to me, after driving this UX for a week, is a highlight, which is the comfort here. Now, when you get in a compact SUV or crossover of this segment, you expect them to be very cramped and small, and if you are taller or bigger, you're not gonna be as comfortable. But honestly, I am one of those groups. I am on the bigger side. I don't feel uncomfortable here. It's that design of the door that we talked about, and combined with another thing, the center console does the same thing. It starts big and it gets very narrow. Yes, taking some of the space in your center compartment here, but giving you a lot. It doesn't feel claustrophobic to sit here. The seat is very wide in this area in the back, where it feels like you're not claustrophobic. It's very, very comfortable. That is something that it seems like they really emphasized on with the overall design of the outside and in the center console to give you more comfort in the front for a car of this size, which is really nice. And lastly, in the interior, unfortunately, the touchscreen is not really a touchscreen on the infotainment system, and we have a touchpad. Talk about that in a little bit, but something interesting, to me at least, if you've owned other Lexus models of this similar generation of infotainment, you're going to have to get used to the different, and in my opinion, better controls. Usually other Lexus models that have a knob for the volume, a knob for tune, and then one to skip tracks right on the dash, and business as usual. But in this, and I wish they would do this actually to other models, you have a little control panel right here. If the way I would describe it best, it seems like it's similar to a old school Mercedes Command with the rotary knob, but it's not quite, because you can put your hand here and you have a little rotary dial to change the volume, and you have another rotary dial to do the tune. You can skip tracks by just pressing 2 buttons and then switch between media and radio and switch the source. This is really cool. Initially, honestly, I'll admit it did take me a little bit of a while to get used to it. You know, I'm used to the Lexus stuff. You don't have this. You have the touchpad. Yeah, we have these problems. You have the knobs. You can control them on the dash. But here, there's nothing on the dash. It's all here. It took me a little bit to get used to it because I keep reaching. I'm like, oh, it's here. But once I got used to it, it's actually really nice because you're sitting comfortably. You don't have to reach and do. You can operate your radio just by a touch of a hand, and you're not frustrated with the touchpad. You can do basic functions, skip track, change the volume, you know, the simple things. This is really nice, and I wish Lexus, now they're going to a whole new infotainment system like the NX that we reviewed a few weeks ago. But this, I wish they would have used this from the beginning, because this is actually really nice. Let's talk about some things I don't particularly like about this model, and it really shows its age with the first one we're going to talk about, the infotainment system. Folks, this is possibly the worst thing about this car. The infotainment system is not touch screen. Lexus did do this in almost all of their models. You had to use the horrible touchpad. It's super distracting, doesn't really work well. They're getting away from it in the newer models. And then in the interim models between the newest, like the NX infotainment system, which it skips all this altogether, and the models that got updated a little bit, at least the screen is touch. But in the UX, this is a 22 model, it's not touchscreen, and now you have to use the touchpad all the time. It gets really annoying. If this is a deal breaker for you, you're gonna need to know this, because this is a 22 model, and I expected the 22 to be updated because it started in 19, 20, 21. That's 3 years. This should have been the year that it was facelifted or mid-year refresh. We still have the same thing, no touchscreen. That's a disappointment. Another disappointment is the back legroom or seat space. Here, headroom is good because this have that same bubble design of the roof like the CHR. So you have okay headroom here, but the legroom is a problem. This is my seating position. I am not tall. I'm about 5'8". This is my seating position. I mean, I am again 5'8", sitting in the back. My knees are touching the seat. This is a little too small. Feels a little too claustrophobic here. So if you are the kind of buyer that are going to look for this to have adults, like kids or regular friends, adults sitting in the back or tall, this is going to be a problem. If you're going to have children in the back, this is okay. However, if you have rear-facing seats, this is also going to be a problem. So your children have to be that exact age group. Or if you're just going to use this car to commute back and forth to work, occasionally have passengers in the rear, you can accommodate them. But if you're going to use it all the time with passengers in the back, this is a little disappointing because things are very small. As comfortable as things are in the front, I feel like it kind of took away from the back, and that's a downside to this. Let's talk about some technical stuff, the nuts and bolts that make the Lexus UX. So the Lexus UX in the US model, there are two models. There's the UX 200 and then, like this one, the UX 250H hybrid. They both have the same engine in a sense. The hybrid one is modified for the Atkinson cycle. That's why it has the FXE designation. The other one has FKS because they are the same engine, just different compression, different timing design because the other one is Atkinson. This engine is the M20A. You're going to find this engine in so many models. It's becoming very popular among Toyota and Lexus models. For example, the CHR in other markets does have this engine. The Corolla Cross has this engine. The Corolla Hatchback has this engine. The Corolla Sedan in the sport models have this engine. This engine has become very popular. This engine is actually a dynamic force D4S dual injection. It has port and direct. Has a very cool redesigned EGR to prevent issues in the future. This is a nice engine. It has very good gas mileage and it has adequate power for its size and intended use. But something unique about the Lexus UX, this is the first time in the US, at least, it has been done overseas, that they use this engine in a hybrid system, almost making it a half generation, because they've used a lot of engines, made it to the hybrid system. The 2.5, which is basically the bigger brother of this engine, the A25A, but they've never used the 2.0 in the US, the M20A. This is the first model that uses it. It's really nice because it gives it that a little bit extra boost over the outgoing 2ZR FXE, the 1.8 liter, which is getting a little ancient. This is a really high-tech engine. They have been around for a little bit while now, for a few years. Its bigger brother, the A25A, has been around longer. We don't see a lot of issues with them. They look very complicated and intimidating, but once you start peeling the layers, things are not as complicated as you think, and they seem pretty reliable. One thing you notice in this, of course, being a Lexus over the Corolla Cross and the CHR, you have a proper engine cover. This is something a lot of Corolla owners actually dislike, that there's no engine cover. It's a little louder because this engine cover is not just a cosmetic piece. This actually has an insulation underneath it to keep the engine noise down. Another thing that also Corolla owners complain about, there is no insulation on the hood. Of course, this is a Lexus. Here is your insulation. I guess they have to distinguish between Lexus and Toyota because this costs more than a Corolla Cross, of course. And this is where that cost comes in. It's not just because of the badge. Let's talk about the transmissions here because there's something exclusive with the hybrid model. But let's first talk about the non-hybrid model, the UX200. That one has the K120 CVT transmission, traditional CVT with a twist. That twist being it has a first gear. One thing that we all dislike about CVTs is how they drone when you take off until you get to like 35, 40 miles an hour. Then they are okay. But that transmission, the K120, it has a physical, almost like a manual transmission first gear. It'll shift into that, take off. When you get past that annoying drone of the CVT, then it turns into a CVT for efficiency. That is a really good transmission, and it's been used in many models. They don't really have issues yet. Everything is smooth and good. I really like that design. It solves the problem. Yeah, CVTs are still annoying, but at least this one is better when you want a reliable daily driver that gets good gas mileage. But see, the interesting thing is the transmission on the hybrids. This transmission is called the P711. It is actually unique and new, and there's not a lot of information on it. It works exactly like the other eCVT transmissions, which, by the way, if you're not familiar with this, eCVTs in Toyota Lexus hybrids, they're not like a regular CVT with two belts and the cones and all that mess. This is completely different. The operating theory on paper works. It has a continuously variable ratio, but how it achieves that ratio is completely different from a normal CVT, not even in the same realm. However, this transmission is business as usual, two motors, all the planetary sets, and a very compact design, actually extremely compact, even more compact than the Prius one. But there's one thing that I noticed that is interesting about this transmission. It has a transmission cooler. So it uses coolant to cool that fluid, but it's external, it's not inside the radiator. But it does have it, which is something not very common in other hybrid transmission. But this one does have it, potentially because it's very compact, not enough space to cool that fluid, so they decided to put it. But that's the P711. There is not a lot of data on this transmission reliability-wise. However, because it is basically the same design as the one going all the way back 2001, theory-wise, and because we're talking about Toyota Lexus, I don't anticipate a lot of problems with it, especially with that cooler. That's even less heat. Heat creates problems in transmissions, so life is good there. Now, the Lexus UX, you can get it in all-wheel drive, at least in the US, with the hybrid. With the non-hybrids, front-wheel drive only. That is a strange decision from Lexus. I wish they would have revisited that, but that's what they went with. And you can get this in all-wheel drive in the hybrid. At least there is that option. And something interesting while I was doing the research for this video, apparently, for our European viewers, you can get an all-electric version of this UX in Europe. The 300e does get supposedly around up to 250 miles of range, which is not class-leading, let's put it this way, but at least it's there, which is very interesting. I don't understand why we don't have that model here. We're hyping other cars that are not coming yet, but there is an all-electric model in Europe of this exact car. So, what is the final verdict? Folks, I am truly impressed by the Lexus UX, specifically that interior. Because cars in this segment, the compact crossover segment, they're usually designed for economy, and people, the car community will call them eco boxes and economy boxes, and they're really loud and just very plasticky and cheap feeling, but they serve a really good purpose for economy and just cheap transportation that is reliable. But this is a different story, because you climb inside, you don't feel like corners were cut to justify that this is just the entry-level model, it doesn't matter. everything you touch and operate inside is very high quality, and to a point where you get in an LS and you'll see some similar features here in the entry-level model. That is a point against the LS, but definitely a point up to this one. There was no compromise in making the entry-level model, and I love that. And that, of course, does not come without its drawbacks. If the infotainment system is the most high on your shopping list, this is going to be a problem. There's no touch screen. That touchpad really can get annoying sometimes. This might be a problem. The other thing is, if back seat legroom is top on your priority list when shopping for a car, this is going to be a problem. But if you want a car that is entry level, not huge, doesn't cost a small fortune, it's still a lot, of course, being a Lexus, but not the top end of the small fortune, the lower end of the small fortune. This will not disappoint you. If you plan to drive it mostly in the front seat is super comfortable. It just doesn't feel like a small, compact crossover. It feels comfortable, it's very refined. Everything you touch, everything you operate, it's just a nice place to be. It's quiet, drives good, handles good for its intended purpose. This is not a thrilling drive, the very sharp handling and all that. And if you're buying this car for that purpose, you're in the wrong segment altogether. But this is a very nice package. I really like it. Watch for the things I didn't like about it, because these might be some deal breakers for some folks. But overall, this is a very nice SUV. And of course, it's a Lexus, a Toyota product. This is going to be very reliable past that 10 and 15 years where some of its rivals will start falling apart and depreciate like it's a competition who can sell cheaper. This will actually hold its value because of that reliability. And being such a nice car, you can keep it for 10, 15 years, not really have major issues. And that should be the mentality going in to look at one of these and consider buying it, because then, in my opinion, you'll be buying them for the right reasons then. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.